Hey, so composition might be the single most important aspect when it comes to creating a picture. All the beautiful colors, all the lovely hard earned details in a scene won't matter anything if the composition is off. Think of composition as the DNA of your picture. It's how everything is intently placed and organized. My name is Tyler Edlin. I've got about 12 years industry experience in concept art and illustration, and today I'm going to be giving you guys my 7 pillars of compositional design. And what's special about this video is I'm going to be featuring your Zelda pieces because we had a Zelda challenge going on in the Discord, link below. So let's get into this. This is going to be a great video if you struggle with coming up with the design of a picture. I have been really hyped for Tears of the Kingdom, as you can see, and I'm going to be dropping a lot of hard truths. Well, they're not truths, they're my opinions, so take them with a grain of salt, of course. But I did manage myself to design 4 pictures right before the release to the game, and I do want to take this energy and my passion for it to create some awesome lessons for you folks here today. Now, as a brief primer for composition, let's set up a few standards today. I'm going to show you 4 awesome picks and submissions here that I think really serve as a good example of what composition does and how it can work, at least in my eyes. So first up here we have Mose. Again, most of these are former or current students of mine, so thank you all, you kind folks, for submitting here. This is beautiful, right? This is a nice static medium shot, and it plays really well to the calmness with its limited warm color palette and simple storytelling elements. Not every picture needs every color or a massive range of colors. This is a limited palette, in my opinion, done very well. Next up we have Lester Z's here, and this is awesome, right? This is asymmetry at its finest with a lovely blue-yellow split color palette, striking hard with a good use of the rule of thirds, right? And as you guys know, that's where we divide our composition and we put our important elements on the thirds. It's hard to go wrong when you do that, but not every composition needs it, not at all. Now this piece here from PK Ellen is a good use of actually just zooming out and giving us a nice bird's eye perspective to really show the drama of this discovery that Link is having here in this moment. A lot of pieces this week, you're going to see me recommending to do the opposite. Zoom in. This is an awesome example of where taking the camera and pushing it back really works in its favor. This is an awesome symmetrical piece here from D-Dart. Again, a nice lovely color palettes, simple kind of moment. Not every picture needs rule of thirds. Not every picture needs to be broken up in a very dynamic way. I love the simplicity of this picture and how it's set up, though it's not ideal for every picture. You always have to choose what's in the best interest for your story, for your picture, and I usually find that out by asking myself, what is this picture about? And then I try to reverse engineer and think of, okay, what is the best way to show this? All right, so these are a bunch of fine pictures to start us off. All of these are very evenly rendered in finish. They are complete, they feel balanced and cohesive, and these are all attributes in my eyes of what goes into a good composition. So let's get into the rest of the main principles here. All right, guys, so stay to the end if you want to see the details on this next challenge for this upcoming summer. There was a lot of submissions as well. I couldn't fit everybody in. I had to trim it down considerably to fit it into this video. But what that said, these are not going to be in any particular order here today. These principles or pillars are just some of my favorites. So let's get into these. So for number 1 today, let's go over lighting. Lighting can really make or break an image. It's a great way to show, you as a creator, as an artist, how you can artistically tackle a particular scene. For me personally, I always like to kind of match the quality of the lighting to the particular mood or tone of a piece. Should it feel mysterious? Should it feel vast and epic? Or should it feel some kind of imposing sense of danger? Right? And of course, you could go hard or soft with the type of lighting to help match even the colors. These 3 are awesome examples and very different examples of different types of lighting you could try in a particular scene. Right? So let's just start with Megillium. And again, sorry, I'm going to probably butcher a ton of names here. I'm not going to say that again and again, but I do humbly apologize if I do get your name wrong. So this is really cool. And when I'm talking about lighting for a lot of these particular pieces or the structural design of a composition, I'm referring to the fact that like I love the location of all the pieces in this, right? So I'm not talking about let's rearrange things. I'm going to be talking about how those shapes, the shapes that I just traced, are lit and how they're portrayed, at least on from an aesthetic kind of point of view. So for example, right, when we blow this up, there's a very high amount of inconsistency that I referred to earlier, right? So we have very dense, very photoreal backdrops on the forest, to we have very rough, unfinished looking painted trees in the foreground, you know, with a variety of shapes and edges. So it's kind of going back and forth between what's painted, what's photo, what is 3D. Like this looks like untouched 3D. So you have basically three different kind of components here that feel unstitched together. And lighting is your opportunity to really bring it all together. I know when I'm building my scenes out in 3D, that is the exact way to do it. So I just have a quick recommendation here. I think just making the lighting a little more subtle, pushing the contrast between the highlights and the shadows, and simplifying that background considerably could still help, you know, convey the message of the scene without kind of compromising anything. Again, very nice submission overall. All right, so next up, Mary Carva art. Again, sorry about the name. I love this. This is a very different style of lighting than we just looked at. It's very pop-esque. It's got some hints of like the Spider-Verse style in there, right? We could see like these halftone textures in there for some of the shading. It's very awesome. It's also very loud. A big, bright red color like this, in my experience, is very difficult to balance out because it is so visually loud. And there's a lot of that going on in the core area here with where the characters are. So I would try to basically neutralize the surrounding area against a very loud pop, which is the focal point here. And that's all I did in my recommendation here, is I kind of just toned down a handful of the surrounding area to make these characters really stand out, and so we can feel that lighting just a tiny bit more, right? So nothing really, again, fundamentally change. I would say not to move anything around, but just to balance the saturation and the intensity of that color. Remember, these are smaller torches. They're not going to be throwing light all the way across the room in a very big space like this. And next up for lighting, we have Kyle Manzo's piece here. This is awesome. It's very dramatic. It's very cinematic. We see lots of cool effects going on here. The character does feel slightly out of pose for this particular shot. He's a little stiff, not acting a bit. But this is about this menacing creature, right? This boss character. And it's about fear and imposing danger. This essentially, in my opinion, is a little over detailed. We can see all this beautiful detail and texture kind of all throughout the character and stuff, and we're losing the shape of him, right? Like we start to lose the silhouette, which is more of like a value situation. So when I come in and make a recommendation on like this, I want to see the silhouette. So I can kind of see how menacing and large this is, but my imagination can fill in all the details, like when we're watching a scary movie in a dark sort of tone with the scene. So right, if all we do is kind of jack up that contrast, simplify some of the internal details, because we don't need to evenly detail a piece like this, and then add a little bit of rim lighting on that head to pop out some of its facial features. To me, that would absolutely just do that and sell how dangerous this creature is. So next up for my second pillar today is going to be shot composition, or the type of shot, right? We can have a variety of shots when we're designing a picture. They can be a wide angle sort of lens, a wide shot. We could have a long telephoto lens, which would be, a very long picture with very little perspective shifts. We could have a medium shot, which kind of is like a very typical sense of how we view the world. And we could have Dutch angle, where we're tilting the camera, as well as having close and far versions of all of those, right? So this is a nice little spread, a nice little variety of what types of shots we can have, even if it's a small sample of it. We have Scylla here. This is awesome, right? It's a slight Dutch angle. There's a lot of cool things going on. It's high action, but for that sense of drama, I think the lighting is a little bright. It's a little light. But I do like the level of zoom on this. I do like the angle. And I do feel like we're missing some other component to this picture. Some force that, or some opposition that this character should be battling, that's creating all this tension in the scene. So for me, if I were to increase the tension on an already well designed picture, I would balance out the color, I would add in the missing element. In this case, I just threw in a dragon, and to me this would really help sell this as a moment kind of painting. But again, very well done, Scylla. Now, if we have Inaccio's piece here, this is fantastic. Again, it's dynamic, right? Link is running. It has some value issues, which leads to readability ones. Structurally, the shapes could flow a little bit better. So essentially, we have this giant dome or this sphere in the background, and the eye is kind of just like right up against the corner of that frame looking outward. It's projecting a lot of energy kind of going out this way, and there's a very big sharp angle pointing down here. So, and my recommendation on this, I would try to basically adjust a few of the values so that it's popping a little bit better, and then rotate that sphere so it's facing in, so that this medium shot, and that's what this is a nice medium shot, works in full. So yeah, we have some foreshortening on the character, balance the lighting to make it pop a little bit, and for me, I think once the details are all here, you'll have like this nice visual path that'll flow up to that focal point. But again, very well done, Inaccio. And for Famincio here, this is awesome. This is tranquil, right? It's subtle. We have a bunch of moblins right here, right? About to ambush Link. Who's this tiny little guy, right? We're going to zoom in as he's capturing his fairies, right? Up to no good. However, this is so zoomed out. This is an example where I would definitely recommend zooming in, getting a lot of those major components that I just selected, and rearranging them so that there's an overall higher impact and sense of danger with this ambush, right? That's about to happen. So in my recommendation, I jack up the color a little bit. I have a bigger sense of like, okay, big character, overlapping character. Have a couple standing back here that I didn't add in. Have Link about 2 to 3 times bigger in the scene. And again, you can frame the other side to really make it look like he's surrounding. It just focuses so much on negative space, and everything important in this picture is so tiny. I think just bringing that camera in is going to fix a lot of those, and then rearranging some of these other elements to help make it all really come together. Alright guys, for my third pillar today, let's talk about contrast. Contrast might be just the single most important, the golden rule of a good design. There has to be difference in a sense to kind of create a sense of interest with a picture. It can be used to tell a story, add to the theme, or create an added sense of depth and dimension to a picture. Those 3 big strengths are a huge component of contrast. And some of these pictures are doing this very well. Others need a little help in that department. So Kuei's example, for example, this is very well done. This is an example of what to do. We have cool versus warm, right? That's contrast. We have big versus small. That's contrast. And of course we have curves and straights. That's also contrast. There's many types of contrast. And we have dark versus light. That's also another great form of contrast. So again, thank you, Kuei, for sharing. This is an example of what to do with contrast in a picture. Now from Miller's here, this is a cool picture, right? It's got really nice colors. It's got a nice sense of depth, but the character is getting lost in a lot of this backdrop. Again, we really do lose sight of some of these important silhouettes when it's very busy and very similar in value and tone from behind the character. I simply just recommend making that shape pop a little bit more, adding contrast from dark into light, and then a more contrast and variety of shapes in the scene. So before this, a lot of the shapes were ending and starting right around that mid area, like right in here, right? It's all getting compressed together. So having a contrast, a greater variety of shapes, more verticals, more horizontals, more diagonals that flow to a focal element, for me, that would make a better looking image. But again, thank you, Miller. This is an awesome piece. This one's tricky, Sundapple Magpie. Thank you for submitting. Essentially, this has got too much contrast. It's end up kind of like checkerboarding in design. So we have like light, light, dark, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light. There needs to be an organization to that. My recommendations on this would be simply just to desaturate it to see the light and dark patterning of your picture, see what the shapes are really doing and how they're playing off each other from a value pattern standpoint, and then make any changes you need to. So for me, it would be like the big change, if you're making any, would be to separate that contrast between foreground and everything else. If you wanted to make a more dynamic picture that has a little bit of a flow, I would certainly add more perspective to this, and I would frame that dragon by awesome shapes of waterfalls behind it to really work the overlaps and how these visually can be placed together. But again, for me, it's mostly a contrast thing. All right, guys, so for pillar number 4 here today, let's talk about camera angle and specifically that level of zoom, the horizon line. Where we put a horizon line and then how far we're zooming in and out from that really does create a huge difference. We have these 2 awesome paintings by Andy Deneuve and Gleaming Moon here that show very different stories. So we need very different types of pictures, of course, to get these across. With Andy's, this is awesome. And I know Andy was going for, you know, an old retro style kind of cover, and I think stylistically it hits that. But for me, I loved some of your original sketches that I saw you post, either it was like on Instagram or in the Discord. I remember seeing them, and I think some of the ones that pulled back a little more and were kind of behind that character, I think kind of works a little bit more, because what we're selling here potentially is like a nice, awesome adventure. And when we kind of crop out and have a tangent with the character being so up against the wall and this part up against it, it's just like it's mostly a framing scenario that we're talking about here. And I think for what you're going for, pardon my terrible drawing on these next 2 guys, but like if we kind of had Link in the foreground, if you're going for a retro cover and we get from the back and we frame it with a box and then we add some kind of temple or landmass floating in the clouds behind him. Again, this was me trying to remember what your sketch was, and I think just getting it closer to that will create a more impactful sort of image that gets the idea that you're going for across a little bit more. And in a similar sense, and actually a reverse scenario here, we zoomed out, right, with Andy's, and with this one, I think we have the opposite issue, where we're so far zoomed out, we lose any sort of impact that this battle against this Gleeok on this bridge is going to have. And anyone who's fought this guy on the bridge here knows this is dangerous. It's very cramped. It's very dynamic. You don't want to fall off. So I just think this is one of those cases, like if you stuck the camera angle like much closer near or behind the character, slightly looking up to show the height and scale differences of these 2 figures, again, you're going to create a much better sense of danger and urgency with this picture. The way the camera's set up, it's so far zoomed out right here, it's like we're a bird and we're just flying over the scene. So of course it doesn't look dangerous because we're so far away, we're safe. And again, this is a terrible drawing, but you know, like stick Link up close, get underneath that creature, show how sharp and dangerous he really is, and then if you have room in the outside, you could add a few of the architectural parts from the bridge. But yeah, I just get up in that picture's business, you know, to really sell that idea. All right, guys, so for my 5th pillar of composition this week, I want to talk about specifically cropping and framing, and that's kind of building up from a lot of these previous terms and ideas that I've mentioned prior, right? It's having the right level of zoom, a good horizon appropriate for it. It's about choosing what to put in an image as what to leave out, and it's about the framing of it, right? Like where our content sits within the picture space. So for example, if my head, you know, is like down here and I'm talking to you guys like this is bad framing, right? There's like a whole head's worth and it looks odd, right? It looks weird. The same kind of principles happening in some of these pictures. Again, if I were just talking out of the camera like this, looking outwardly like that the whole time, and that's an awkward framing scenario. Portrait artists deal with that quite a bit, but artists that are painters and concept artists and illustrators, right, we have to deal with this on a larger scale when it comes to placing all these individual elements, right? So for example, with Ping's picture here, we are looking at the character right here, right, and he's looking outward like this, in this direction. and a lot of the action is focused right here. There's a lot of that same dead space all over here that I had just mentioned, and it's not really adding anything. I think the fix on this is relatively simple. You know, we take the character, we move it over to here, and then you complete the picture. There is a lot of inconsistency going on with this. Parts of it that look very, very, you know, finished, very tight. Other parts that look really awkwardly bland and unresolved, like the ground. And of course, there's structural issues like perspective. You could see this pillar here, which seems like it's supposed to be in line with all of these. It's just out. I don't know. There's a space anomaly here. There's structural things that need to get resolved. But again, I do recommend just bringing the picture, the character back, add a midsection to the horse. It was kind of missing that, and then give that room for the trajectory of the movement in the picture, and I think it's going to work a lot more efficiently. Same with sandals. Again, we're so far zoomed out, we're essentially framing a much larger portion that features a lot of dead space in the picture. So I do feel if we up the contrast, which again we previously mentioned, and then we just rearrange a few of these elements so they're in the frame a little more visibly. Like, again, everything is so tiny proportionately, like tiny, right? And they're all the same size. And I'm not going to do any drastic changes on this. I mean, I personally would, but if you just want like a quick fix, I think you could just rearrange the existing components in here so they're a little more, you know, on the viewer's plate. You know, they're in our perspective and we can kind of see them, and they'll, of course, read, right, a little bit stronger without telling a different story, without really changing much. Just, again, visual contrast to make dark against light, and the size and scale will certainly add a lot to this. Alright, so for my sixth pillar of composition, let's build up off of framing now and talk about staging, right? This can be from big things like the positioning of components within your frame. It could be more subtle to just changing the expression on a character's face, the acting, right, of a particular character in your picture, to a prop. You know, what is the character holding, to what is their body language communicating in a composition. And these are awesome examples here of what we can do and how we can look at staging in a scene. So for example, Nacho's piece here. I love this. There's a lot to contend with. This is a very complex scene, but everything feels intently placed here. The interaction between, you know, Link on the horse with the young character here, them giving a little gift, you know, a gesture of kindness and gratitude to all these other characters going about their busy day without really kind of competing with the main focal element, which is, you know, right, Link on the horse. In my opinion, this is a very muted and subtle palette, and if the artist is certainly aiming for that, absolutely keep it the same. I would try to get that character to pop just a little bit more, so I just basically spice up that contrast and that color, just surrounding that, you know, vignetting the character like that, and I think that's going to help it pop. Following this line of light will certainly just help with that readability just a little bit more, but it's small changes. Again, this is how to dress a scene pretty properly here. These other two fall in a very similar category for me. This one from Zhao Fan, which I know she didn't finish, and she doesn't actually play Zelda. She just kind of was being a good sport about participating in this challenge. Again, very well rendered. And we have Elvira's here, which I love it, right? It's full of character, it's full of energy. But I think, like, for this chaotic sense of Link getting chased with a character here, it's very stiff, right? It's like he's like stiff as a board, you know, quite literally here. I think if you add a Link running, you know, at a more forceful angle, spaced it out just like a little bit more, and then, you know, of course, just touch up the expression of shock on his face, I think this will work very well. This is a lovely picture. And Zhao Fan, again, this is beautiful rendering. This is rendering at its finest, at least where she was completing it. But at the same time, what is this saying about Link in a particular picture like this? He looks bored as hell soaring through the sky. It's not exactly communicating a sense of adventure or dread. So if I'd say for a typical Link picture, the expression doesn't work that well. But like, let's say if we were really into pulling this and making it work a little better, it's like he could have just watched a friend die or guard die. He could have lost something important to him and is just depressed as heck, soaring through the sky on this glider. But it just shows you like how important and how impactful the subtleness of an expression can be when you have a very character-centric, close shot illustration like this. The expression is going to sell every idea. So as long as the expression is matching the tone and the story for the picture you're going for, that's the thing to keep in mind. All right, so for pillar number 7, our final one here today, it's going to be rhythm and flow. Think of this as the arrangement and the spacing and the relationship of the individual elements on a particular scene. Just like our ear will follow the rhythm of a song, our eyes will visually follow a rhythm in a picture. It's how we control a sense of movement in a picture. So like, let's look at Billy Roberts' example here. This is awesome. This is amazingly well done. Like when I look at it, I can instantly see all kinds of rhythms and movements in this particular picture, right? And it's all working very nice, and there's multiple points of contrast in here. So this is again an example of what to do. I think it works really well. I think personally though, the water and the grass, they're all kind of blending together a little too much. I'd create a little more separation. That the water should probably be a little lighter to match the sky, and we could push greater emphasis of reflections. But overall, this is fantastic and a fine example of what to do in a scene. Lester's got great examples of rhythm here. Like we can really see that. Like we got big, we got medium, we got small, we got medium, we got small, 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 we got big behind everything, right? And there's lots of overlap with really good rhythms of big, medium, and small. He's leaving the breadcrumbs literally for our eyes to follow, particularly if we're hungry, to go to the particular location in a scene. I wouldn't change anything about that aspect. I love the lighting in this. I love the level of finish. I love the style. Personally, for me, I'd probably just like the eye, or the sphere picture we looked at in Asios like a long time ago. I would probably just have that face the character and then work on that movement path a little closer to like this. For me, that just works a little more visually, and you get more shapes kind of compounding in like that. But again, apples and oranges. It's a great picture either way. Venecio here. Again, this is awesome, right? There's a lot of flow and movement going to it. To me, it does feel weird that there is like a lot of empty space kind of here. I would bring down the top a little bit more and then overlap these. This little cluster is overlapped here, and Link is overlapped this one, but I would just create, again, more overlaps to get that rhythm to flow to this a little more. And so that's kind of what I did. Again, I just bringing this into the frame. I bumped the color and the shadows that we could see on the ground far below and overlap the skies. Look at this, is very kind of messy. I am sorry about that. But yeah, I think this is a great picture nonetheless. And rhythm and flow is very important in a picture and adds to the lasting appeal of a picture as well, because we'll want to engage with it longer if our eyes are following these little subtle paths laid out. Alright guys, thank you for watching. If you made it this far, of course, remember, take what I said with a grain of salt. I'm not trying to necessarily make everybody just like me or on the exact same page. Art is about expression at the end of the day, but I'm not exactly coming at it from an art for art's sake background. Remember, I'm an illustrator, concept artist, and I assume a lot of people that are entering want to follow a similar path, so I was just simply giving recommendations. If you want to learn more and stay up to date with all my current availability and releases, definitely sign up for the newsletter. There's a lot of freebies in there currently. Some I'll be taking out for this season. I staffed up on the mentorship so we can book you even sooner. And of course, let me know below if you have any questions about anything I covered. The next challenge will be Final Fantasy 16 theme based. I have a little bit of information here. I've got the due date. I wanted to feature at least one of the icons, like one of the summons, one of the big creatures like Shiva, Ifrit, Rama, Bahamut, any of those kinds of characters, those giant kind of creatures. It just has to feature one of them. If you want to do a more concept-based picture, like a theoretical one, like, oh, this could be in the game, or if it's not in the game, I'd love to see your take on that as well for that upcoming challenge. If you want to enter, if you don't want to enter a full illustration, you could come up with an idea that would be fitting for the game. So, of course, you can get access to the Discord where you'll be able to submit those and join in with the community talk with that. But with that said, you guys have a great day, and I'll catch you guys next time.